The Symphony of Silence. Detective Inspector Alistair Finch, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with the weariness of 1,000 unsolved cases, surveyed the scene. The Grand Meridian Bank, usually a hubbub of financial activity, was now a sterile tableau of forced entry and violated security. The air hung heavy not just with dust motes disturbed by the forensic team, but with a palpable sense of violated trust. Clean? Professional. Finch muttered, adjusting his spectacles. No witnesses saw anything useful. The alarm was disabled with an almost frightening precision, and they got away with a cool $1 million in unmarked bills. Detective Sergeant Miller, a younger, more energetic officer, but with less of Finch's weary wisdom, chimed in. "Cameras are down, sir. Looks like a coordinated attack. They knew what they were doing." Finch sighed, a sound like air escaping a punctured tire. Indeed, they knew exactly what they were doing, which makes it all the more frustrating. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment smash and grab. This was orchestrated. He walked towards the vault, its steel door gaping like a hungry maw. The lock, a state-of-the-art multi-layered system, was meticulously bypassed. No brute force, no explosives, just silence. The method of disabling the alarm was equally elegant. Someone with intimate knowledge of the bank's security systems, or someone with an exceptional understanding of electronics, had simply rerouted a signal, turning the alarm off for a critical 10-minute window. "Forensics finding anything?" Finch asked Miller. "Prints are wiped clean, sir. Standard procedure. But they did manage to snag a few fibers, possibly from clothing. They're being analyzed now." Finch ran a hand through his thinning hair. Fibers, useful perhaps, but far from a breakthrough. He felt the familiar weight of a difficult case settling upon him. He hated these kinds of robberies, the ones where the perpetrators seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving behind only echoes of their audacity. As he pondered, his gaze drifted to the far corner of the room, where a figure was quietly mopping the floor. A slight, almost invisible man with a wispy mustache and perpetually downcast eyes. This was Arthur Peabody, the bank's night janitor. Finch barely registered him. Peabody was a fixture, as much a part of the bank's landscape as the marble pillars and the teller's cages. He was unremarkable. However, this time was different. As Finch watched, Peabody paused in his mopping, his gaze fixed on the vault door. He tilted his head slightly, as if listening to some unheard melody. Then he began to pace slowly back and forth and muttered, "The resonance frequency. Clever. Very clever." Finch frowned. "Finch, what was that, Peabody?" Peabody startled, his eyes widening behind his thick glasses. "Oh, Inspector Finch. I didn't see you there. Just admiring the craftsmanship of the vault door. Beautiful piece of engineering." Finch raised an eyebrow, his weariness momentarily forgotten. "Engineering? You know about engineering, Peabody?" Peabody shuffled his feet, looking acutely uncomfortable. "Well, I read a little. You know, in my spare time. Mostly theoretical, of course. Nothing practical." Finch sensed something. A flicker of intelligence. A hint of something hidden beneath the janitor's unassuming exterior. An intuition, honed by years of police work, told him that Peabody was more than he appeared. "Theoretical, eh?" Finch repeated, his tone softening. "Tell me, Peabody, what's so interesting about the vault door's engineering?" Peabody hesitated, then seemed to decide to trust Finch. He lowered his voice. "Well, sir, it's just that the way the lock was bypassed. It wasn't purely electronic. There were secondary mechanical locks, bypassed via manipulating the harmonics using a carefully calibrated ultrasonic frequency. It would take someone with an intimate knowledge about this to implement." Finch stared at him, stunned. The forensic team hadn't even identified this. "Ultrasonic frequency? How would you know that?" Peabody looked down again, embarrassed. "Well, like I said, Inspector, I read a bit of engineering. It's just a hobby." Finch ignored the self-deprecation. "Peabody, I need you to come with me. Sergeant Miller, get him a statement. The symphony of silence, it seemed, had just found its unlikely conductor. The labyrinth of logic. Back at the precinct, Peabody sat in a stiff-backed chair in an interrogation room, looking utterly out of place. Miller watched him with open skepticism. Finch, however, was animated, a spark of hope rekindled in his weary eyes. "Oh, right, Peabody," Finch began, leaning forward. "Let's go back to the bank. You mentioned ultrasonic frequencies. Explain that further." Peabody, still nervous, cleared his throat. "Well, Inspector, the vault door had a series of secondary mechanical locks that were designed to be activated in the event of an electronic failure. These locks were designed to be redundant. However, they also have a vulnerable spot. Each lock had a resonant frequency. By directing a precisely calibrated impulse at that frequency, the locks could be momentarily disengaged without triggering any alarms." "And you believe this is how the robbers bypassed the locks?" Finch pressed. "It's possible," Peabody said. "I mean, I could be wrong, but the precision by the harmonics made me think of this approach. An electromagnetic pulse would have tripped the alarms, and physically drilling into the lock would have taken too long and made too much noise. But an ultrasonic frequency, that's silent, elegant." Nora scoffed. "Elegant? It's ridiculous. You're telling you these crooks used some sonics to open a vault? That's out of some movie." Finch shot Miller a sharp look. "Let him speak, Sergeant. Go on, Peabody." Peabody continued. "Furthermore, the signal rerouting to disable the alarm was also quite clever. Each alarm was connected in different layers with specific connections that would take time to solve. However, the robbers were able to quickly find a spot to shut all the alarms at once. This would require someone with a technical background and someone who had lots of experience of trying." Finch paced the room, his mind racing. Peabody's theory, as outlandish as it sounded, had a certain internal logic. It fit the evidence, the lack of forced entry, the silence, the speed of the operation. And it explained why the forensic team had missed it. They were looking for physical evidence, not acoustic signatures. "Oh, right, Peabody," Finch said, stopping in front of the janitor. Let's assume you're right. Let's assume they used an ultrasonic frequency generator. Where would they have obtained such a device? And how would they have learned the bank's security protocols?" Peabody thought for a moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. "An ultrasonic frequency generator could be custom built. Someone with an electronics background could easily assemble one. As for knowledge of the bank's security protocols, that's more difficult. It could be an inside job, or they could have obtained it from someone who had access to the bank's schematics." "Like who?" Miller asked, his skepticism still evident. Peabody hesitated. "Well, there was a disgruntled former employee, a security consultant named Edgar Croft. He was fired a few months ago after a dispute with the bank manager. He had extensive knowledge of the bank's security systems. He knows how each alarm is connected and the location of it." Finch's eyes lit up. "Edgar Croft. I remember the name. He sued the bank for wrongful termination. The case was dismissed, but he made some pretty nasty accusations about the bank's security practices. Miller, pull Croft's file. See if he has any history of electronics or engineering." As Miller left the room, Finch turned back to Peabody. "Why didn't you mention this to the other officers, Peabody? Why wait until now?" Peabody looked down again. I didn't want to cause trouble. And besides, who would believe a janitor?" Finch smiled, a rare and genuine smile. "I believe you, Peabody. You have a mind for details, a gift for observation. You see things that others miss." Miller returned, a file in his hand. "Croft has a degree in electrical engineering, sir, and he apparently built his own security systems as a hobby." Finch snatched the file. "All right, Miller, get a warrant for Croft's residence. And Peabody, you're coming with us." The labyrinth of logic was beginning to unravel thanks to the unlikely guidance of a janitor with an extraordinary mind. The overture of truth. The warrant executed to Edgar Croft's residence was not pretty. When the police knocked down his door, they found Mr. Croft in his study. The room was filled with electronics equipment, schematics, and blueprints. In the center was a custom-built ultrasonic frequency generator connected to a laptop. On the screen was a detailed diagram of the Grand Meridian Bank's vault door. Croft didn't resist arrest. His initial bluster quickly faded, replaced by a defeated resignation. Faced with the evidence, he confessed to planning and executing the robbery. He had used his knowledge of the bank's security systems to exploit their vulnerabilities, and had enlisted the help of 2 accomplices to carry out the actual heist. "I was angry," Croft said, his voice bitter. "They fired me, ruined my reputation. I wanted to show them how vulnerable they were. I wanted to make them pay." As Croft was taken into custody, Finch turned to Peabody, who stood quietly in the corner of the room, observing the scene with a detached curiosity. "You were right, Peabody," Finch said, his voice filled with admiration. "You cracked the case." Peabody shrugged, embarrassed. "I just put the pieces together, Inspector. It wasn't really anything special." "Don't sell yourself short, Peabody," Finch insisted. "You have a gift. You should use it." Back at the precinct, Finch arranged for Peabody to receive a formal commendation from the police department. The media, of course, had a field day with the story of the janitor genius who solved the Grand Meridian Bank robbery. Peabody, however, remained uncomfortable with the attention, preferring the quiet anonymity of his janitorial work. One evening, a few weeks after the case was closed, Finch found Peabody cleaning his office. He walked in and sat on the edge of his desk. "Peabody, I have something I want to ask you," Finch said hesitantly. Peabody stopped dusting and looked up, surprised. "What is it, Inspector?" Finch cleared his throat. "I know you like your job here, but you are more than qualified to be a detective. I have seen your incredible work that solved the bank robbery. I know you're thinking of how things are done." Peabody was silent for a moment, considering. "I don't know, Inspector. I've always been comfortable in the shadows. I'm not sure I'm cut out for the spotlight." "The spotlight can be harsh," Finch conceded, "but it can also illuminate the truth. And you, Peabody, have a remarkable ability to see the truth, even when it's hidden in the darkest corners." Finch paused, then continued. "Look, Peabody, the world needs people with your talent. People who can think critically, who can see patterns, who can solve problems. You could make a real difference, Peabody. You could help bring justice to those who have been wronged." Peabody considered this, his eyes thoughtful. "I don't know, Inspector," he said finally. "It's a big decision." "I know," Finch said. "Take your time. Think about it. But don't dismiss it out of hand." He stood up and clapped Peabody on the shoulder. "Whatever you decide, Peabody, I want you to know that I'm grateful for your help. You saved us a lot of time and effort on the Meridian Bank robbery, and you've reinforced my faith in the power of the human mind." Finch turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and one more thing, Peabody," he said with a smile. "I've also put in a request for you to receive a bonus for your work." Peabody smiled back. "Thank you, Inspector. I appreciate that." As Finch walked away, he knew that the decision was ultimately Peabody's. But he also knew that the world would be a better place if more people like Arthur Peabody were willing to step out of the shadows and use their gifts to make a difference. The Grand Meridian Bank case was closed, but the overture of truth, conducted by an unassuming janitor, had just begun. It was a symphony of intellect, a testament to the fact that extraordinary minds can be found in the most unexpected places, and that even the quietest voices can hold the key to unlocking the most complex mysteries. And Detective Inspector Alistair Finch knew that the investigation for the bank robbery had only just begun. It was the seed that had been planted for Peabody to come into the light, to perform police work, and use his remarkable talent to uncover more mysteries that has yet been untold. Moral of the story: brilliance often hides in the most unexpected places. Never underestimate the quiet observer, the unassuming janitor, the overlooked assistant, the silent thinker, for they may hold the key to solving the greatest mysteries. True intelligence is not defined by status, but by perception, curiosity, and the courage to see what others miss.